What does it say?
I think they've got really All right, it is July 6th, 5:45 p.m. I'm calling this Finance Committee meeting to order. Present are council members Lang, Harris, Bub, Blake, and myself, Marmy. First item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $183.50.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Stallings, Appropriation Department, and it's for the cutting of a scram strap, restitution that was paid for a scram strap, and then a power cord or Ethernet cord that was damaged for someone else. That's what they paid for.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion by Bub, second by Harris. Any questions and or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $127,375.38. Anybody here from the judicial?
I do not see anyone here from judicial, but this is a technology grant award that they got, and they want to appropriate so they can use it to upgrade some of the technology. So I can't answer any specific questions, but certainly note for that.
Questions? Entertain a motion?
I'll offer a motion.
Motion by Bob,
Second.
second by Harris. So, I guess for the record, just as far as a question, to make sure that we have answered, if we do not utilize all this grant, do we have to pay it back? Are there any funds that, matching funds or anything along those lines? So if someone from the judicial could at least respond to council via email or something to let them know those two things.
Yep.
That's usually with grants. I mean,
Sure.
I know a grant is coming in, but those are usually a
If
couple.
there are any obligations, either
Exactly.
during or after or anything,
Right.
I'll reach out to them tomorrow. And I
Very
anticipate for somebody to be here, but they aren't.
Right.
And if something might happen, then I'll have them answer you with those questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
I feel confident since it's a grant that we can go ahead and move forward. It isn't an application either, so it's actually, they've been awarded. So, but I think that it would behoove us to at least get that information so we're aware of it. So, any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is request for appropriation in the amount of $9,700.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, that will be a payout for a former firefighter.
Motion.
Second. Motion by Bub, second by Lang. Any questions and or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Director. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $10,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As part of our ever-growing Parks Department, we've embarked on raising money to build 8 pickleball courts. We've picked a site in front of the ice arena on Sherman Valley Road. We've got a group together of approximately 20 people that are working to raise private dollars. This is the first of the money. It comes from Lincoln County Foundation, about $10,000.
I'll offer a motion.
Second.
Motion by Lang, second by Bub. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Rhodes. Obviously looking forward to adding this to the fifth ward. I think it'd be a nice little thing to add there. Do you know about how much we need to raise in total for this
Yes,
project?
409,000.
Okay.
409,000, and an average pickleball court with all the amenities about $50,000. I've got a commitment currently on 3 of those, of the 8. And once we get our folder put together, we'll hopefully get at least another 2, which brings to 5. And then we'll go back to a few of our donors and say, can we wrap it out?
Could I challenge you to a match once we get this built?
Absolutely. I've never played, but I will play. But I'm also going to challenge Spencer to a downhill at Horns Hill.
Not even honest.
And challenge Mr. Harris to climb on the wall and he does it at the pool.
I like that.
As long as the mayor does it too.
I'll like it in there. Hey, I'm with you.
All right.
Any further questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Director. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in amount of $19,392.67.
This is the remaining money on the CARES Act money. It was appropriated last year, as you did here at council, and it became unappropriated with the turn of the year. And we're just looking to reappropriate it to settle some technology bills that we have left before we move into the next mode of the ARP money.
Questions?
Motion. Second.
Motion by Bub, second by Lang. Questions and or discussion? So this was already approved once?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It came
And what was it approved for before?
I believe for computer hardware and software, and it was, it became unappropriated because the PO was closed, so
Okay.
which they inadvertently
So
did occasionally.
there was some remaining that was not accounted for yet, correct?
It's settled bills pretty much, I think, to this point. This is what I believe is remaining. I can get you those answers exactly if you'd like, so.
Yeah, because as a finance chair, I never saw anything come across my email because I had to approve everything ahead of time.
Okay.
And I didn't see anything on this or anything on our remaining dollars.
Okay.
So,
Computer technology was used for screens of computers, upgrades and things like this. A lot of it was towards the end there, so.
okay,
But I can get you accounting for that.
okay, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation amount of $608,688.
Yeah, this is, as you know, we do tax collections. Both these next 2 pieces are one's for Jet Z1 and one's for Jet Z2. They adopted the Newark tax ordinance in its entirety, so everything out there from withholding and taxes at 1.75%. This is on the collection side. We just need to appropriate so we can distribute it according to the agreement to the 7 entities that are written to receive it.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Bub, second by Lang. Any questions and or discussions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $3,206,640.
Same reason, different entity, Jet Z2, larger amount due to the fact that the large business in that is Amazon. So they've obviously had above and beyond sales in the last year, and this is to distribute those funds accordingly.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Lang, second by Bub. Any questions and or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
One thing that I just wanted to, in particular, comment to the committee and also those that are watching. If you're looking at the tax collections and you see that we're ahead of last year, just make sure that you keep in mind that last year the filing deadlines were extended to July, so therefore folks did not have to turn in. So the next couple of months will be crucial as far as when we're looking at those income projections as far as tax collections to see where we're at. It was anticipated that by this point we probably should be ahead, just because of the fact that, you know, like I said, folks didn't have to file last year until July. So hopefully it'll keep the trend and we will stay ahead, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves right now as far as thinking that we're way ahead, when in fact that was the case.
Mr. Chairman, can I say a couple things
Sure.
on that? Just one additional thing, as you saw in the state biennial budget, they passed the okay for people to get refunds that worked here and didn't work in their office. So that's a good thing. It was for 2021. It depends on which side you're on, but we're on the receiving side to help pay bills in the city. Just want you to understand there could be refunds involved. It's two ways, but we just don't know exactly how that's going to balance out. So I think over the next few months, there's going to be a lot of transactions there. We'll see how it nets out. So the one thing, keep in mind, the tax office, it creates another big paperwork storm for them a little bit, and I have some feel for that, and it's kind of too tough when usually they're on the downside of that work and everything. They've had a hectic time, so this is going to create additional work for them, but we'll keep you updated on those refunds.
So let me ask, and I did hear that, so, and I was curious. So as far as, let's say that someone works in Whitehall, and now all of a sudden they worked in Newark, so they get a refund from Whitehall because they actually worked in Newark. Well, we gave them a tax credit, so do we have to go back and refigure our portion too?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I believe should happen, what the details are.
Right.
They should have to pass another 1% because
Right.
they're getting a 1% credit.
Exactly.
So in that case, we'll win, but the other side is how many people drive to Newark for work. And that's the side we kind of don't think about. We are the largest city in Licking County, so there's a fair amount of people that work here. Even if you lived in Heath and worked here, you'd get that full credit from us. And they are paying 1.75% to us in that case, so we'll have to recredit with 1.75.
Right.
So that's where it's very hard to calculate. Your software is really a collection software that isn't there to do a lot of what ifs, and we're going to have to kind of see how this pans out. If it had included last year, 2020, that could be disastrous a couple ways, but hopefully it'll balance out and there won't be any big move the needle too much in either direction a little bit for us.
Right.
We'd be very lucky with that. So I would just say you're going to see that refund column on your revenue reports, some activity on that line sometimes. So we have to do refunds within 3 months of when they're due in a general year, or we have to pay tax interest on that, so we always do that. So normally you see a flow of refunds pretty cyclical at the right time. Now it's going to be balanced out on how they get to apply for those refunds.
So it'd basically be for folks who have to pay quarterlies, right? Because if it only applies to 2021, those that do not pay quarterlies, it wouldn't impact them at all.
Well, but if you lived in Heath and worked here, your employer's taking out your 1.75 on withholding with every one of your paychecks.
Oh, gotcha.
So on the withholding side,
On the withholding side,
Yeah.
yes.
that too, our withholding's about 80% of our tax collections probably.
Okay.
Cash flow. So again, we'll just kind of see, hopefully we'll balance out a little bit because we also have Columbus over there. Cities in the middle of the state that are maybe 2 hours from a large city, and they are the large city, they're probably going to get hit kind of hard because they have a lot of the employment within that 2-hour radius. But we got a little bit of both ways, so hopefully it'll work out. But I'm going to keep an eye on it, and we'll just see what it does. I don't know the exact detail specifics, or have they come out with it yet, but probably the Department of Taxation is going to have to do that. Normally you have up to 3 years to refile your tax returns. I don't know whether it's going to follow that same rule. Seems like it may, but if it's that, it'd be really spread out, but we'll just see what happens. So.
All right. Yes.
Mayor, will we consider maybe doing some publications from our tax department just to make it easier so that, I mean, obviously it's to our advantage, right? If we encourage Newark residents who are
Sure.
working elsewhere to take advantage of this.
Yeah, I think once we get the fine print and seeing what the guidelines are, it might be a form or a direction of a form or something that's a little more simple than just your normal refund, because it's so unique in this way, so. You know, as we hear more, it kind of hits as legislation in that bill, and then for the budget, and then, you know, as I say, probably like the ARP money, it went to the US Treasury for a month or two for fine print. I would assume this is going to the High Department of Taxation for some fine print, and once we hear that, we'll let you know right away, so.
Very good. Thank you for the
Yep,
update.
thank you.
With that, this Finance Committee meeting stands adjourned. Next up, I believe, is Service.
All right, we'll call the Service Committee meeting to order. Those present are myself, Rath, Harris, Barker, Blake, and Bub. First, actually, I'm going to read two resolutions that we're going to consider and discuss simultaneously. I know that sounds strange, but you'll understand once I read them. Substance and discussion. Resolution number 21-40, a resolution authorizing all actions necessary to affect the governmental natural gas aggregation program with opt-out provisions pursuant to section 4929.26 of the Ohio Revised Code, directing the Licking County Board of Elections to submit a ballot question to the electors. And that's 21-40, has to do with natural gas. 21-41, a resolution authorizing all actions necessary to effect a governmental electricity aggregation program with opt-out provisions pursuant to section 4928.20 of the Ohio Revised Code, directing the Licking County Board of Elections to submit a ballot question to the electors. So basically, these are two opt-out programs, one having to do with natural gas, the other having to do with electricity aggregation. And do we have somebody here who specifically is going to speak to this? All right, let's start out with County Commissioner Buck. Thank you, sir, with the parade of people behind you.
Small parade. Thank you.
So if you would, while you come to the spectrum, you and Mr. Buck, even I know, we know who you are, but if you would each start out with your name and address for the record, and then speak for us.
Absolutely, Chairman. Thank you. Tim Butt, Licking County Commissioner, also President of the County Commissioners Association of Ohio. I live at 551 Kensington Drive in Heath, Ohio, 43056.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. I'll just give you a quick overview of the county's interest in this subject, and I'll introduce John Lights and Kirk Mazarek as well, and they can provide some detail. Basically, we were approached by the County Commissioners Association of Ohio with the suggestion that we, the county in the unincorporated areas, possibly with some municipal partners, consider electric and possibly natural gas aggregation programs on the ballot for this November. This appears to be a particularly attractive year because it's an off-year election, and oftentimes in more contentious election environments, sometimes there's so much going on, there's a lot of confusion, and an electric or natural gas aggregation requires a good bit of educational process for people to understand the opportunity and make an informed decision. You obviously can't oppose it, but you can take it to the ballot, which is what the chairman has offered as a thought. Why is the county government interested? Well, you're all our constituents. Everyone in Newark's a Licking County constituent, so we share the same constituents. And to be honest with you, it's just simply an opportunity for them to save money on either natural gas or electric, to reduce their bills. If they save money, that money stays in their pocket. It also circulates back in the community, and it's a general savings across the board. Electric and natural gas are commodities. They're sold on the market, and anyone can make a decision how they want to do it. Aggregation is simply the thought of group purchasing, putting together bigger groups and to be able to go into the RFP, into the marketplace and get more favorable rates, whether it's cubic feet of gas or whether it's kilowatt hours of electric. And to be able to aggregate is group purchasing. And group purchasing, the bigger the group, the more attractive, and bringing in experts who can help with the group purchasing so we can make the best buy and save people money. Seems like a win-win situation. There's really no downside for it. What you as a committee can consider, and what we would ask you to consider, and what we would ask the full council to consider this month is taking one or both issues to the ballot, and then as a part of an educational process, seeing if the electorate is interested in saving some money on their utilities. That's basically it. I can tell you from a county government standpoint, Kurt works for Palmer Energy. They're a consultant. We've worked with them for about a decade on the 30 or so major buildings that we own. Across the state, about 4/5 of the counties, a large group of the counties, aggregate both their electric and natural gas for all of our facilities. We've saved huge amounts of money through years. I mean, 6-figure kinds of savings on gas and electric for our constituents. It is absolutely, group purchasing is the way to go when it comes to these commodities. And this is taking it to a different level in Licking County. We as the county commissioners, I'm speaking for myself and Commissioner Flowers and Commissioner Black tonight, we are considering, as you would be considering in this July timeframe, whether to take this to the ballot in November. We're asking you to consider it to be, among others, municipal partners in making it almost a complete county-wide approach. We can put it on the ballot for the unincorporated areas of the county. I think the only ones who would be excluded would be the 3 townships who already have aggregated. We already have 3 townships, I believe it's Harrison, Etna, and Granville that already aggregated. So they would not decide in this, but we can put it on the ballot in the other 23 townships. We are also we invited the administration, all the trustees and municipal partners to come and talk about this recently. The municipal partners, just so you will know, who are interested are yourselves, the City of Heath, and the soon-to-be City of Johnstown. I've expressed a strong interest in joining us to go parallel as partners, them through the Ohio Municipal League, us through the County Commissioners Association of Ohio, to bring this ballot to the ballot simultaneously this November, so that our constituents can hopefully understand it and make a decision that could save them some money on their utility bills. Essentially, that's it. That's the county's interest. We have no financial interest in this as a county government. We're simply interested in trying to bring a program to our community that can save people money. And I believe it's about 25 counties in Ohio already have this. And because this is a favorable year to consider it, it appears that between 8 and 10 counties that currently do not have it are considering what we're asking you to consider as well. And that's an effort to take this to the ballot this year to save money and keep the money in the community. So that said, that's our interest. I'll be glad to answer questions if you have any for me. However, I'd introduce some folks who are much more savvy in terms of energy than I am. This is John Lights. John is the Assistant Director, LEUTZ, the Assistant Director of the County Commissioners Association of Ohio. He's an authority on energy. He does this for us, for all the counties of Ohio. He really gets it. He's also a former mayor of Grandview Heights. So he also understands the municipal side and where you're all coming from as well. And Kurt Mazarek, who will be after him, who is with Palmer Energy, and he's the consultant. They're the consultant that we use to basically go out into the commodity market and get us a good deal for utilities. So that said, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm here if you have any questions. Mr. Lights will introduce himself.
Thank you, Commissioner Bob. Chairman Rath, John Lights, my address is 209 East State Street, Columbus, Ohio. That's the CCO Association office. And I'm here today on behalf of the Ohio Municipal League and the County Commissioners Association of Ohio to basically, I want to quickly outline the process and why we're doing this for you to help you with that issue. The County Commissioners Association has been in the acquisition of utility supply, gas and electric for our counties for about 10 years. About 3 years ago, the Municipal League had talked to us about, well, you guys are doing it, could we do? And anyway, the end result of that is that the Municipal League has come in under our program. So if you choose to do this as the City of Newark, you would actually join the program through the Ohio Municipal League's program, and we would work on this together. And of course, the Executive Director of the Muni League, and of course, my close buddy Eddie Albright, send their best wishes tonight, Kent and Eddie. What we do is we utilize the joint purchasing statute under the Ohio Revised Code to basically go out and competitively bid through an RFP process, the acquisition of the supply of the power, whether it's gas or electric. That section of the code is authorized for this type of activity among local governments. We process it through an RFP process. Palmer Energy, and you'll hear from Kirk, they are our consultants. They have no interest in the energy industry at all. They do not represent a utility. They do not represent a generator. They do not represent an agent of a generator or a commodity supply grouping. They merely consult and advise us. They conduct all of the analysis for bidding the load out, placing the RFP on the market, and we'll probably get 8 to 10 responses, if not more. Again, because we do this extensively across the state. When we put an RFP out, the market understands that we mean business and we're bringing good quality load to the table, and we have a lot of interested suppliers of electric service or natural gas service who desire to respond to the RFP. Once that RFP comes back, it'll be given to you to decide as the aggregator of the program, or if you choose to cede your authority to the county and put it all under one program, the collective bodies of you to look at it and make a decision which of the RFPs you would like to accept. We do not have an association with a certain supplier or anything, so we don't bring you a set deal and say, hey, we'd like you to join our program and here's what it's gonna involve. That's ultimately your final decision as the council. Based on that process, we have 26 counties right now that are involved in the aggregation process. We have 67 of our 88 counties who are members of our CCO program on its own, whether they're doing facilities or they're involved also in an aggregation program. So we bring, basically, as Commissioner Bupp said, it's the ability to consolidate load and volume. You're in the opportunity to bring Licking County's load together, which benefits all of you because there's more load than if you did it separately. And then on top of that, you have the ability to join into the rest of the load that the County Commissioners Association and the Municipal League are putting out under one RFP at that time. So you get a compounding load volume situation. It gives you the opportunity to get very good pricing. And again, ultimately, we will bring you several RFP responses, and you will ultimately decide which one of those you would like to choose, which pricing structure you would like to have. I would be happy to answer any questions you would have. If not, yes, sir.
Which gas companies are involved?
We will put it out to bid, and we will see who chooses to respond. So.
Are you talking utilities or suppliers?
Yeah.
It's only behind major utilities, and I can talk address that in
right.
a second when I put it up there.
My question is would Columbia Gas be one of the
Absolutely.
suppliers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not suppliers.
Well, where you
Why don't you go ahead with your
Yeah,
presentation,
sure.
David? I'll lighten up some information. We'll do some questions after that.
Thank you. Kirkland is Eric. I'm with Palmer Energy, 5577 Airport Highway, Toledo, Ohio, but I'm actually representing the County Commissioners Association here, as well as the OML in this particular case. To answer your question, we can only do this behind the major utilities, whether it's electric or gas, so we can only do it behind AEP, we can only do it behind the First Energy utilities, Vectren, Duke, all that sort of thing. And for natural gas, we can only do it behind Dominion and Columbia Gas of Ohio. But this is we are not changing the lines out there, it has nothing to do with that. This is actually either the gas that is running through the lines or the actual electricity that is running through the lines outside. Pardon me?
No.
Oh, okay. So it's not the actual, doesn't mess with Columbia Gas or your, or AEP in any way. They have third-party suppliers that are already addressing this market, so they're independent on this from that perspective. I actually used to work in Columbia Gas, so I know a lot about that whole system.
I worked there, so I think I would have to abstain. That's what my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question though, sir? Okay, thank you. Just try to fundamentally where we came from on this, and John did talk about it. We got involved with the County Commissioners Association about 12 years ago, actually from somebody from Licking County. If you guys know Dale Arnold, he suggested that the CCAO get in contact with Mark and myself with Palmer up in northwestern Ohio to do an analysis of their program because we're very independent. We have no ties to any utilities. We have no ties to any suppliers. We're agnostic, don't care. We are out there working for you. And in this case, the OML and the CCAO have hired us to act as all the cities and municipalities, as well as the county commissioners, independent energy advisor. We bring to them various opportunities out there that they can choose to participate or not participate. It's up to you completely. This particular program has been very successful. I mean, John has talked about the 70-odd counties that are participating in the energy program. There's 27 in the actual aggregation programs, and numerous cities, dozens of cities are participating in that as well. And it works very well, but everything is based on what John talked about was the 9.48, which everything is based on an RFP process. That is a very integral part of this process. You need to bid this out, you need to RFP it out, you need to, and I'm talking about after it passes, because we'll talk about passing in a second, but it's very important that everything stays independent and above the board. A lot of times what we have heard is other people come here from a supplier and is always, trying to say this is what our program is. Well, you can't just rely on a supplier and I'm not talking utility, I'm talking about suppliers. You cannot rely on or go for the supplier's advice on when is the best time to buy the electricity or the natural gas. That's what the RFP process is for, to get the best possible prices for your constituents. This particular program, one of the founding things, and we talked about it with your mayor here a few weeks ago, one of the concerns was, I believe that there might have been other people here that talked about there were fees to get out of the program. There are no fees. If your constituents choose to go through this program, there are no fees if they choose to leave the program. That's a fundamental, very important thing, that if they don't want to participate after they're in it, they can get out. There's no problem. And that's really important for all your constituents to have that flexibility in the programs. It's a long process to get this on, but the first process is obviously having your council approve to put it on the voter ballot this coming November in this particular case. The county commissioners have chosen to put it on for November. Other cities seem to be wanting to participate with that as well. It is a long process after that until they're actually receiving the electricity. There's various opt-out periods that are all put in place by Ohio code that you have to follow. Your constituents have the opportunity on 2 different occasions to get out of the program via mailings. Then they can call a number, they can go register online to not participate if they choose not to. But the important thing that we have seen, and this is another question that we came from the commissioners meeting here a few weeks ago, is why not do an opt-in project? Why don't we just give people the opportunity? Those generally don't work. They're less than 1% or 2% of the people participate. And our history has been in this area. We just did one in AEP territory a little bit north of here for electricity, and it was around $90 savings per residential household per year. And what we've experienced in our estimation is with the power of purchasing, you can get very good pricing like that, but that's money that stays in your community. So if you have $90 savings at 20,000 households, that's a significant amount of money that stays in your local community dollars, whether it's just them going out for dinner once, whether they know they're having that extra money or not. So we think that's a very important part of it as well. One other thing that we've heard before is people talk about grant money. We don't recommend grant money in this program at all, because all you're doing is taking that money from constituents. If you say we want grant money involved in this, the suppliers are going to include it, but they're just raising their price to what your constituents are participating in. So we historically recommend not to participate in that activity. Once it passes,
I'm going to
yes,
ask
sir.
you, I'm sorry
Sure,
to
anytime.
interrupt you, but I want to ask you to clarify that statement a little bit more detail.
Okay.
What would the purpose of grant money be? How would we use that?
So many years ago,
Clarify that.
yeah, many years ago in the northern part of the state, there was only one supplier that was able to do this. And they initially offered grant money on a per household basis for all the communities to get. So if they had 10,000 houses and they get $30 per household, that would go right into the general fund. That was a decade ago that a lot of that went on. In this latest number of rounds for about the last 5 years, that has all gone by the wayside, because that was more of a strictly grant at that point from First Energy to the constituents in the northern part of the state. What we have seen is some people come to various county commissioners and municipalities and talk about, hey, we can get you grant money, we can get you a bunch of dollars added to this. And all you're doing is when you're putting this out for bid and you say you want $30 per household, which is, I'm just using it as a specific number. All you're doing when you're putting that out for bid for 8 or 10 suppliers out there is they're looking at that and saying, okay, instead of their number being, I'm just throwing general numbers, 4.5 cents, now their number's 4.7 cents. Your constituents end up paying for that grant money. We just don't think that's in the best interest. Let's give your constituents the best amount of low pricing as they possibly can. Did that answer your question, sir?
Yes.
Okay, great. After it passes, it's a 4 to 5 month ordeal to get through. There's an RFP process. There's numerous public hearings that must take place, et cetera, by law that you have to take place. Now, one important thing that I need to clarify in all that is we handle all that for you. Now, it's not to say that if you have a public hearing, yes, we're going to need you to tell us this is when you want to have it, this is where we want to have it. We show up, we do all the work. If you guys want to speak, certainly that's your opportunity to get out there and talk about the positivities of the program and do that. But that's by law that you have to produce public hearings. There's a lot of paperwork that is associated with this program. We handle all that for you. That's not to say that there's nothing you're doing. You might get a few questions from constituents. What we've historically seen is some constituents will call in, and they're not usually negative questions. They just don't understand the program and they want some clarification. So we are there either hand in hand with you, working out of your office, or we can train your people to address some of those questions, or we have a 1-800 number and cell phones that we can give them numbers on to give to us, talk to us directly on any of the questions or concerns they have about this type of savings programs. The opportunities are out there. I mean, we believe very strongly, again, on the pooling effect. Commissioner Buck talked about that. When you put all these counties together and you go out on major bids, you become a huge entity that the suppliers all want that business. You get much better pricing because of that, whether it's on the natural gas side or electricity side. And again, we are completely supplier agnostic, don't care. We want what's best for your constituents. If the company is financially viable to handle your constituents, we want them to get the business if they can provide an excellent number one. And as for the various utilities, doesn't matter as long as it's finding a major utility. One thing that Licking County does have a little bit different than some of the other areas, we do have a lot of REA, Rural Electric Cooperative. Those people in those areas will actually be able to vote on this, even though it doesn't affect them at all. And I believe Commissioner Bug has talked to the REA people, and they've talked, and they seem to be either neutral or positive about this program.
The Energy Cooperative.
The Energy Cooperative here. It doesn't affect their people, and that's what they get to the vote and they say, oh, I don't want to do this because they don't want to, they think they're participating, but they're really not. So they're not, it's not taking them out of the cooperative. This is just for the people that are behind a major utility. So programs worked very well so far. Again, we continue to gain counties every year. As John has said, we have 6 or 7 that are looking to do it right now this coming November. It is a good time to do this program just historically speaking, presidential years aren't the best time to do it. Obviously, this is not a presidential kind of an off election year, so it's usually a better time to put this on the ballot if you want to get it passed. But the most important thing is, even if you have a constituent that doesn't want to pass this deal or doesn't want to participate, they don't have to. And the second part of that, and this is one that I can't quantify. I know I talked about a $90 number. What I can't quantify is this. Many times, you'll see these crazy offers out there. You get them in your mailbox that say, you're going to save X amount of dollars on your electricity for the next 3 months. Well, you're signing longer term contracts, and after that 3-month or 6-month period, historically, that person then is kind of at the whim of the supplier. They can charge almost what they want. When they're in this program, they're just taken care of. They're not getting those extended numbers where they could be above the price that the utility is offering.
Yep. Thank you.
Any questions for me on the technical aspects?
We'll hold questions for just a second. First, actually, Mr. Mayor, I'd kind of like to hear from you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And I've got a list of questions written down, and I know I saw some hands come up, and we'll hear from our law director next.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Just my opinion, or from when we sat and talked with it, or what are you thinking?
I'd like to hear what you're thinking.
Okay. Well, you know, I think you have to consider both sides of it. I'm just going to be open and honest. I think a little bit it is a supplier. I mean, what is the downsides are the questions you'll want to ask. I think there's few. but there are sometimes, we've sat in this room and talked about pooling resources for a multitude of things over the years. Trash hauling was one. I mean, it's quite different than this, but I think single suppliers sometimes can make you a little vulnerable. One of my questions are, and as we get through this, I want to see what your opinions are, is how large, it's some might fit a smaller city, it may not fit a big city. And you gotta look at that a little bit, and you gotta look at different ways. We have a population that said, surely during trash hauling, they wanted to make decisions. They didn't want a single trash hauler. And if they paid more, that's okay, but they wanted to be able to do what they wanted to do. So obviously you're deciding whether it goes out on the ballot, and they can make that decision. But I think without a doubt, the burden you're gonna have, and all of us would have, is to educate people on what this is about. I would ask you how many people either up here or people you know have changed suppliers in the past so many years, and are they happy or are they not happy? Because I've had some unhappy, and it's nothing directed to these guys, and I truly think they're up and professional, and sometimes there are some, excuse the term, shysters out there, and I think there has been over the years, that kind of get you in as they really discussed and get you in a short period and do that, and that's truly not what we're talking about here. I think it's your opinion and our opinion to sit here and judge the participants. Number one, Palmer Energy has got accolades and is very good, so that's a good place to start. But I think anytime something's on the ballot that is somewhat confusing, people need to understand how. So I think we're taking on some responsibility to be able to educate the population the right way about what are the benefits of this and what it can and can't do. I think probably, years back, it's been going on for a while, deregulation and all that. Certainly, people thought they were gonna save, a few $100s a year, but that's not the truth. I mean, it doesn't happen that way. Savings are savings though. So if you save $90, $90, that's pretty good. But I think people sometimes get upset because they don't have the savings they thought. And at the end of the day, then they turn around and want to give it up. So this program really is based on participants. I mean, the power in collective bargaining and pulling everybody together. So I really think Newark is a big piece of this because of our population. If you're already into a program, you wouldn't qualify right away. You could opt in. I think they maybe did discuss that part. If maybe you have another year or two left on it, or however long it is, when that expires, then you could get into this program and opt into it. But as they explained, if it was a strictly opt-in, people just won't do it. It has to be an opt-out. But if they don't want it, they have to take the initiative to get out a little bit. So in other words, I'm not going to tell you, I can't throw the needle either way completely. Savings sound good, but that isn't always the best for the community if they get totally confused. And I think you have some responsibilities on your back, just being honest, that you're endorsing a program one way or another a little bit, that you have to think about just a little bit. And I'm not here to naysay, but I am the other side of it a little bit at times. So, sure. Okay?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
I believe it was Mr. Leeds?
Lights.
Lights, thank you, Lights. That spoke about the governing authority, whether that be the city or the county. Is that correct?
That's
Did you
correct.
spoke that? I guess I'm a little cautious.
Yes.
Or concerned about that. Are we going to be part of that governing authority? Are we going to relinquish that authority to the county? Or does that affect our savings if we become our own governing authority along with the county? Because now you have two aggregates instead of one.
You talking about our personal consumption
No,
as a city?
no, I'm talking
Okay.
about the governing authority who decides which RFP to accept. Is that-
I can address that for
Okay.
you if you want, and then you can decide afterward. I don't care either way.
Yeah.
When we RFP it out, it would be an intention to RFP everybody out in Licking County as well as other counties and cities across the state for this. Whether you choose to have all the paperwork handled by them is your choice. You're gonna have the same price either when we bid this out. You'll end up with the same price because we're going to be pooling all of your constituents and the small commercial loads all in one load. Whether it's two separate agreements, one with Newark and one that has the county and maybe the other cities cede their authority, that's up to you. I don't care.
Does it affect the price of the?
No, because you're going to be RFPing out at the same exact time.
Fair enough.
With that, so you're going to be participating in a pooling group with them regardless if you choose to go with this program.
Okay, a couple quick questions for you while you're up here.
Yes, sir.
Does not affect the name on that bill regardless
No.
of the
No.
supplier?
No.
Okay. You say there's a time frame to opt out.
Mhm. there's actually two time frames. There's one time frame that after the successful supplier is picked, they end up sending out a mailing to all the prospective people that can participate. They have X amount of time to opt out, 20 days at that point to opt out. Then after that, the utility themselves, AEP or Columbia Gas, then sends out another letter that says, hey, you're being signed into this. Are you sure this is what you want? Very similar language on that sort of thing too. So in the first one, historically what happens is that first letter from the supplier will have your county commissioner's logo on it, it'll have your logo on it saying this is a program that you voted on, et cetera, that gives you that 21-day opt-out period.
Let's see, 45 days later, I decide, you know what, I decided I don't wanna do this. I'm past the opt-out period, what happens to me now?
Get out, you call a number and you get out, and you're out, there's no penalty to get out, there is no
A year later,
termination fees.
2 years later.
No termination fee, that's very important about this, there is no residential termination fee on this program, that's a very important part of it.
All right,
You can get back in anytime you
And
want.
you can get back in, and that's important too, sir, because what happens is you have people that move here, and their neighbors are on the deal, they wanna participate, all they do is call a 1-800 number, and they're put in right away, and they're getting their electricity or gas here in the next month or so into the program. Yep.
Mr. Law Director, you had some input you wanted to share with us.
I do. I have a question about that third opt-out comment that was just made, but that's probably for another day if we move that far. Because I think the ordinance says that after you have enrolled in the aggregation program, then you have the opportunity to opt out of the program once every 3 years. So you're in it for 3 years. And at the end of that period, you can opt out. If you don't, you're in for another 3. So it's not like you can do it opt out on Thursday and opt back in the following Wednesday.
That's not accurate, sir.
I'll just read the statute.
The statute, so what that statute actually, on the 3-year deal, is there has to be an opt-out period every 3 years, no matter what. But
For the blanket.
For the blanket thing on it, but no matter what happens, any individual residential can opt out anytime after they look at their first bill and they say they don't like this, they can get right out, call the number, and they're out.
So can I ask a clarifying question on that real quick? Does that mean that the city, should we opt into this program?
The city?
Yes.
No, you can't. I mean, so
What
you're,
I'm saying is if we go along with this,
right,
we're in it for 3 years,
right.
and then we have, as a unit, we have the option to say, we don't want to do this anymore. But we gotta wait for 3 years.
As the city, where that will depend, sir, will be, if we do a 2 or 3 year agreement in the beginning, let's say it's a 3-year agreement, you sign an agreement with a supplier to provide electricity or natural gas for that 3-year period. You are locked into that 3-year period at that particular moment. You can't get out for your constituents at that point. I don't know why you want to, I mean, if you went through the process, it wouldn't make sense. But after that first term, yeah, you can get out anytime you want, you don't have to do it. Once you pass, or your constituents pass the ordinance, that's it. You guys can aggregate at that point. You don't have to then ever put it out. If you guys don't want to aggregate, you can just choose not to aggregate your constituents after that initial term.
Go ahead, Mr. Sassy.
The other concern I have, the primary concern, is the language of the ordinance, and Mr. Bob referenced this, that this would be a question that would go to the Board of Elections and to the voters in November of 2021. I don't think we could do that. It says in section 3 of the language that the resolution that's passed by council needs to be certified to the Board of Elections not less than 75 days prior to the general election.
Right.
But the statute says 90 days,
It's in August that you have to have it in 90 days. It's August time.
August the 3rd.
August 3rd.
Yeah, so if we look at August, so that would need to change, that have to say 90 days,
Right.
not 75 days. But if we look at 90 days prior to that, that means we would have to have it to the Board of Elections by August 3rd. When you're at committee today, you would have your first reading on July 19th, the second reading on August 2nd. It's not effective for 30 days, which would be September 1st. So if you were to pass this according to your standard terms and procedure, this wouldn't be effective until September 1st, and you'd miss your deadline for sending it to the Board of Elections by 28 days.
Right.
So I don't know that getting it on the election for November of 2021 is feasible, but getting it on it would, if we were to move forward, it would be for the election in the primary of 2022. So we couldn't you can make the ballot, you just can't make it this November. It would be delayed until May of 2022.
What are our options using either waiving the second reading or emergency clause?
Well, waiving the second reading would still require the 30 days, so that would then have an effective date of August 18th, which would then still be 2 weeks late for your reporting to the Board of Elections. If you were to put on an emergency clause, you'd have to come up with a good reason to explain why this is necessary for the immediate preservation of the public health, welfare, as it's set forth in the charter. But the actual language is 4.06. The immediate preservation of the public peace, health, safety, or welfare. And if you can come up with a reason with why this is necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and welfare, then it could be effective as early as July 19th, and you could make that deadline. But I don't know what that reason would be.
Agreed. Okay. Did you have more to add?
No, that's all. That was my primary concern, and I stand corrected on the 3-year. I see what you mean by it's a blanket notification. I thought that meant that the individual can only do it once.
Anytime they want to. It's a very important part of this. By the way, I'll hand something out to you after that, some legal bearing, just the process.
All right, do we have any other questions from the committee? Mr. Barker? did you-
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So on average, in this type of scenario, and either of you, whoever knows can answer, what's the average opt-out number? How many people opt out of this program?
You know, it's an interesting question. I was asked that in the last one in Johnson as well. So I have to go through a process here to tell you, okay, let's say you have 20,000 households or 40,000 in the county. It's probably only available, this doesn't go out to everybody. If they're already shopping themselves, if they're already with a supplier, the supplier gets a list from the utility, so they're already out. So this usually only goes out to maybe 60 to 70% of your actual households out there, okay? Number one. After that, we see it's usually less than 10% is what our experience has been. To give you an actual number, I can't, it changes every time, but I would say a good estimation is less than 10% that people end up opting out. We've actually seen people that opt out and unfortunately thought they were signing up for it, and then they want to get back in, and we get a call later on, we help them out to get them back in the program right away to get them the savings. Very few people really do opt out at that point.
Follow up.
Go ahead.
You mentioned, I believe you mentioned small commercial loads.
Yes.
Define for me what a small commercial user
On
is.
electricity, it'd be less than 700,000 kilowatt hours a year non-mercantile, so they can't have more than 5 locations, type of thing. So it's not for your, your Wendy's, your McDonald's, it's for your doctor's office, your dentist, smaller commercial, small family-owned restaurants, that sort of thing. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
sir?
Yes, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Mr. Blake?
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Commissioner Bob and the gentleman for giving your presentation. And I'm curious about, it's interesting that you're coming tonight because it was about a month ago, perhaps you're familiar with this group, it's called Power of Future Ohio. I guess they're part of the Ohio Climate Justice Fund. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not, but they were talking about aggregate, very similar to what you're bringing here tonight. The piece that they had a conversation with me about was the campaign effort. And so, I guess now hearing Director Sassen talk about the deadlines, and there's some questions that people will be able to get this on the November ballot. But I'm just curious about what efforts or what support would you provide in educating the public on actually voting on this?
I'm glad you asked. I think he's going to pass it out right here. There's numerous efforts that we do, not only just talking to your various council members, coming in front of council. There's newspaper advertising, there's Twitter, Facebook, all that sort of thing. There's numerous public hearings. One thing that I need to hear from you, and this is where the relationship does evolve, is you need to tell me what you feel that your constituents need to be educated, how they are best suited, because what may be good here may not be good for Southern Ohio on what their people want. So I need to work with you on that specifically, but I just handed out what we do generally for this process, and it seems to work very well on the passage. I can't promise that it's going to pass. I don't know if it's going to pass in your community or not. No idea. I think it's a better chance than not, but.
Around here, yard signs and door-to-door stuff are, that's what, you guys.
We've never done yard signs, and historically door-to-door hasn't worked. Public hearings works very well. with people. Obviously, with the video technology that everybody now has in place after this latest thing, that does help, and we're always willing to do that. Word of mouth, one thing that we have always felt that's very important is to have, whether it's the county commissioners or the city councilman and mayor, if they're behind it. Historically, you guys are at the coffee shop, you're talking to people, word of mouth gets around very quickly on that sort of thing as well. But there's a lot of avenues that we can help out, and I just passed out that, or John just passed out that thing to give you a few ideas.
Mr. Marley, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a few questions, actually. So how often does the RFP go out? Is it every?
Well, it depends. So historically, what we do is we look for the suppliers to give us 12, 24, 36-month deals. We can't go longer than 3 years on that.
Okay.
Government aggregation.
And that's how long the rate is locked in?
Yes.
Okay. The next one is, Mr. Litz, he mentioned that we could either have a volume with ourselves
Yeah.
or with the CCA. I guess, and you tried to say that there can be different RFPs
Well,
coming through, but yet you said
Not
it's the
different
same supplier. So I guess I didn't understand, it's kind of confusing saying that we could do it by ourselves or we could do it with a higher
Yeah.
volume through the county.
let me explain that. Not different RFPs, sir. You can choose to cede your authority to the county, and then they can run the whole RFP process for you. Or when we RFP it out, we will include the city as well as the county and the other cities that are participating as well as numerous other counties and cities. They're all gonna be in the same exact RFP. And
Okay.
your area here is going to get a rate, and it'll be the same as the commissioner's rate.
Right.
Whether you choose to transact that on your own accord
Right.
is what we're talking about, the CD authority, not the actual rate. It'll be
Okay.
the same as Tim's.
All right. You've been very, very clear to say that there's no residential termination fees. What are the termination fees for commercial?
That depends. Sometimes there are, and that's one thing that we have to bring to you when we get the results back. Sometimes there could be a $50 termination fee there, but we bring that to you, and then the next one will be no termination fee, and they might be just slightly higher, and that's where we bring the options to you. So you still have the option not to have those, but I don't want to ever say there's not in the commercial.
Right.
Very rarely, but there could be, but you still make the final decision before we go. So we might forego that first supplier to go to the second supplier with still a money-saving rate, so there's no fee.
Okay. And then finally, how does Palmer get paid through this process?
Okay, so Palmer gets paid, and that's a great question, but fundamentally, the price to participate in this program on a kilowatt hour basis is .00045. And of that .00045, Palmer gets the .0003 of that. And the .00015 that's left over is split up between the OML, the CCAO, and whether it's the county commissioners in this case, or your city will get a small piece. Now, you're not gonna get rich off this. This is not a lot of money. It's really meant just to cover some of your administration costs. It might be a few $1,000s a year. It's not a lot of money, is what it comes down to. So I just wanna make sure you understand from that perspective. We look at it as like, right now I'm taking time. You're in a building. You're gonna have public hearings. That takes heating. So
Right.
there is some administration fees that are attached to it. That's really what that's meant to cover. It's not a, let's go build a park thing. There's not that much money.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Any other questions from committee? Any questions from the audience? I'll ask Mr. Marmee a question. You typically are the emergency clause police. I see no reason good enough to warrant an emergency clause, do you?
I do not.
Okay. So Mr. Bub, I guess my comment to you would be, how do you feel about putting this on during the primary election in 2022? Because it does not seem feasible to get this on the November election in 2021.
Good point. Don't have a quick answer to that. It appeared that November had some potential. May of 2022 may have potential as well.
Midterms, primaries, certainly a much more crowded ballot than.
That's the difference, and I agree with you, and I appreciate the moderator's point. It's in your particular circumstance with the charter, you've got ask that emergency clause question. If it's not appropriate, it's not appropriate. We will discuss it. From a county standpoint, we haven't made a final decision either. We're considering it. And really part of our consideration has to do with whether we can make it a total county-wide approach and whether we have some municipal partners to go, because I think it's a more legitimate county-wide approach if we go together. So
Sure.
we're certainly open to the idea. We still think this has value. At this point, the discussion was regarding November, but I see your point as well, and that's a point of discussion for this month as well. Don't have an answer right off the top, but I understand the consideration.
Any other comments or questions from the audience?
Chairman,
Mr.
just
Mayor?
one quick thing. Sometimes there are costs associated with ballot issues in the primary more than in November. So I'm not gonna, it's probably a somewhat busy May ballot, but you understand we have a lot of township trustees up this November. So it's just a financial input I want to give, that at times when we put something on a primary ballot as a city, we can get charged a fair amount of money because there isn't a lot on the ballot. Now, we'll talk to Brian Mead over there a little bit and see, what his feel is. I don't think he can give us anything exact, but I think it would cost more in May than it will in November. I think that's a fair statement. Whether that's the health and well-being,
And this
the
legislation
financial.
specifically speaks of fall of 2021 election?
It does,
Okay.
in section 3.
Okay.
That was given to you as just an example, you can put, doesn't matter to me when you do it.
Well, it is an example, but it is legislation that's on the table. So
Correct.
we need to vote on the legislation that's on the table, should we choose to at all. The way I see it as the chair is voting on this at this point in time is a moot point, because we're not going to be able to make the fall deadline. So I'm not, I guess I'm open to taking motions if you want to make one, but if we were to not make a motion on this, then this issue would simply be tabled and be allowed to be brought up at a different time, with a different discussion as far as which particular ballot we wanted to put it on, knowing that it's going to have to be 180 plus days before we have this discussion again to get it on any ballot.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
If you fail to act, it dies. If you want it tabled, you have to bring it to the table and then table it.
Okay, I'm going to suggest and request that that we failed to act, because this legislation speaks specifically of the November election, which is it not possible for us to make. So we can always bring it forward again as a brand new issue. Does not prohibit that. So, that's Mr. Blaine.
Mr. Chair, I'm just curious about, if there is there urgent, I just want to hear your comments about urgency, about wanting to act, and I would throw out even the possibility of November 2023 to avoid the governor's election next year and all the busyness that's going to happen next year. I mean, if we were to wait for the next sort of off-year, city election, that would be the 2023 timeframe. And what would that timeframe have impacting your? I mean, you're doing these presentations across the state, I'm assuming, so.
Sure. It is your choice when you choose to do this. The commissioners could go forward, put it on the ballot this November, a couple other committees. You can choose to come in later. It doesn't fit your current timing. They could be doing it in November, passes, and you could bring it in at the May primary and then join at that point. But once we do a contract, put it out for RFP, then if you come in after we've done the RFP and have a contract for this particular proposal, then you just come in with the next year, we're putting out the bid when we put the supply. And then after that, you move into the program, you could merge. So you'd have like a temporary program until the general program expires, and then you just all come in under that program.
Mr. Lang, you had a question?
Thank you, yeah, quick question. If we did put it on the ballot for for the primary next year and it fails, is there any reason would the city be out anything, one, and two, could we then just bring it back in 23 again? and
No,
try-
I mean, the city is not on anything. What you're basically doing, state law requires you to receive authority to be an aggregator from your constituents. Whenever that takes place, you then are an aggregator, and you could do it for a while, you could not do it for a while. We have a county right now that approved the levy, got aggregation approval at the primary ballot this year. They're not moving forward because we couldn't bring good prices to them. So, you know, you have plenty of discretion and flexibility, because ultimately, from our standpoint, we want to make sure that the residents in Newark get the very best rate and very best program opportunity we can bring to them.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Lights, Mr. Bizarek, and of course, Mr. Bub, we appreciate you guys coming to us tonight. I think you'll notice that there is at least an interest to have a discussion, and to possibly go forward with this, but obviously at a more timely, or at a better time period, I should say.
We're here for you anytime.
So we appreciate you coming through. We'll look forward to hearing from Mr. Bub again.
Thank you very much for your time. I just might throw a quick commercial in. When I was mayor of Grand Heights, I actually put in place the first natural gas aggregation program in the state before it was authorized by state law. We worked out a contractual arrangement with Columbia Gas, who had us, and so I'm kind of close to this idea, and I think it works, and I think it worked well in our community before it was actually authorized by law.
Well, we appreciate your time.
Thank you for your time.
With that being said, Service Committee will adjourn.